Few things are for sure in this life, but this is. If we live for any substantial amount of time, we will encounter grief due to the loss of a loved one. Not something any of us ever want, and we all handle it differently. This podcast is to feature those who have done purposeful and meaningful things through their grief. These people featured on here are normal folks, just like you and me, who were thrust into a place they never wanted to be in their lives. A painful place. As they move through their pain, they realize that something worthwhile, something for the greater good, could come out of the unthinkable. I'm sure that none of them would ever consider themselves to be a hero, but when I searched the definition of the word hero, I found this: a person who is admired or idolized for courage, outstanding achievements, or noble qualities. And that fit. And so it's my privilege to bring you the remarkable stories of these heroes in grief. Hi, everyone. This is Tom, your host for the Heroes in Grief podcast, and the response has been incredible so far, and I want to thank you for that. It's getting out to people, and they're letting us know that it's helping them, and that is what it's all about. I want to make you aware of a way that you can support this podcast without having to spend 1 cent, and that is through affiliate marketing. I've set up affiliate marketing for online shopping. If you do online shopping, then I have links to all the major retailers, most of them anyways, and I can provide them for you so that when you buy online through those links, you'll help support the podcast through the percentages that we get. It doesn't cost you anything more. You just shop like you regularly would on the sites that you love. It's very easy. All you have to do is shop. And that's it. Just let me know the links to the places that you want to shop at, and I will provide the affiliate links so that you can do it. If you want more information on this, you can go to heroesandgrief.com. It takes you to the Linktree page where a video explains it in a little more detail. But you can always email me at tom@heroesandgrief.com, and I can answer questions for you. But you can support the podcast that way, and it's very easy, very simple, and it doesn't cost you a cent. Isn't that great? Thank you. Now here's today's episode. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Heroes in Grief today. And today we have Gina Waterman with us. And Gina is a grief recovery specialist and a grief coach. And she has started the grief recovery method. So she's going to tell us all about that today. And it's good to have you with us, everybody. Thanks for listening and tune in. Here we go. Hey, Gina, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks.
Good.
How are you?
Good. I appreciate you coming on. Where are you located?
Okay, so I'm in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and that's North Texas, for those of you not familiar. And yeah.
Yeah, I haven't been down that way.
Oh, no? Okay. I was just going to say, it's great to talk to you. I know you're from upstate New York, which is where I went to school, so it's always exciting to
did you? Where'd you go?
Upstater.
Where'd you go?
Yeah, Rochester Institute of Technology.
Yeah, great. Yeah, we're in... I'm in Niagara Falls, so and from Buffalo originally, so all in the same area. So good. Well, we're neighbors, I guess.
Born from the same, sort of.
Yeah. So the grief recovery method. Why don't you tell us some of your background and what got you into the grief work field and what's going on? So why don't you fill us in?
Well, I just wanted to make a quick correction because when you introduced me correctly, but I haven't written the method. I use the method. The grief recovery method was produced, it's been over 40 years or so. It's an evidence-based program that I use, as well as a lot of other consultants like myself all over the country. And basically what it is a program that walks you step by step to heal your emotional pain from grief events. So I got into it in 2019. I found it in 2019, and I've been working with it ever since. I actually, I don't know how much you want me to go into the whole history, but I'll try and distill it briefly. But what brought me to it was my divorce and also my dad's death in 2015. They kind of coincided at the same time, and I was just stuck, and I felt like a lot of people do when those things happen. I was the last surviving relative in my family, so I lost my brother when I was 19, and I lost my mom. She was when I was 35, so she was around 57, and my dad was 69 when he died in 2015. So I was the last one, the executor to his estate, and back in New Jersey, 1,500 miles away, and I have a child with special needs and all these other things going on. So I knew that at some point I was going to have to take care of all of that. But when it comes crashing down on you, you don't ever, nobody's ever prepared, right?
Sure.
You can prepare and think you're prepared all you want to think you've done enough, but it's never enough.
Right.
So I knew that was coming. It came at a horrible time. And none of these things, as I said, it coincided with my then husband moving out for the last time. And so that's kind of brought me to my knees. There was a bunch of other stuff happening as well. I physically was not well from another car accident that I had. So I was like, I was drowning. And honestly, nothing really helped me except for this method. And I wish I'd found it sooner, like so many people say that come to this work, and specifically using the method, because it would have saved me a lot of time and grief and pain, because I was literally like just in a hole. I didn't know how to get out of it.
Yeah.
So that's what brought me directly to it. But I don't know how much you know about the grief recovery method, or I think
nothing at all. So you're educating us here.
Okay. Well, griefrecoverymethod.com is our main website. And like I said, we are all independent grief coaches and specialists that work all over the country and internationally, actually. So we are providing this service. We don't work for the Institute. But it was the book itself. You can get it on Amazon. It's been around, like I said, for over 40 years. And the founders have both since passed. And Cole James, one of the founders' sons, he has now taken over the Institute. So it's been, like I said, it's transformational once you go through it. It's an action-based program. And if you have a therapist now, we're not therapists, but there are many licensed and professional counselors that are part of our group. And if you have a therapist, and if your listeners are listening, I would encourage you to introduce this to them, because like I said, if I had a therapist introduce me to this, I was seeing many people over the years, including marriage counselors. It would have helped a great deal to walk through this, because it's step by step, it's action oriented, and you have to do the homework, and you do feel some relief from the pain after doing it. So yeah. I won't go into too much detail, but it's, like I said, I wouldn't be talking about this and, doing this as work since 2019 if it wasn't something that really worked and was helpful to not just me, but tons of people.
Yeah, it obviously had an impact. So,
yeah.
First of all, let me just express my condolences and all your grief, because as our listeners probably know by now, grief isn't just the deaths, but it's the divorces, it's the loss of a job. It could be all different kinds of things. So right. You've experienced multiple and compounding grief in what you've gone through. And right. Another point is that you talked about therapists and counselors. They all don't have grief backgrounds, so that's a good idea to bring that to them and say, "Hey, could you look at this, and could we maybe walk through this together?" And it may help them in the long run, because not all of them have that training. So, and that's odd to a lot of people, but all counselors do not have grief training. I had a Columbia professor tell me that it's an elective at Columbia, actually. So right. It's good to bring that to and be your own advocate in this, because you sometimes need to educate them a little bit too, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, there's several people. You can go and listen to our podcast as well. Feel free again, the Grief Recovery podcast. And those, I don't know if I shared that link with you, but I will later, so that your listeners can get to it, because it's awesome. It does show you directly the people that have been doing this for decades, right? Several of them said straight up, like, we never learned this in college, or we learned like a tiny little bit about grief, but we haven't really gone through enough of it. So it really changed their worlds and therefore their clients. So, and I, like I said, kind of testimony on the other side, sitting on the other side, going to therapists for years and being like, all right, is this all we're going to do? Like, I'm not putting it down, but it just was like so eye-opening when I went through the initial workshop for the stuff I was going through. Mm-hmm. So the accumulated grief that you just mentioned, and we talk about a lot in our program, is real. And a lot of people, the Institute says, I think about, on average, people come to this program with probably 7 or 8 losses that they haven't dealt with in their lifetime. So whatever age you come to it at, I just happen to come around 50. you have about that to work through. And that seems like a lot, right? And you mentioned the death is the most common one, divorce, career loss, financial loss. There's over 40 losses. Moving is a loss, considered a loss. But all of these things just create for everybody in the world. We're all human, right? Some kind of emotional pain that's triggered by either an event, a relationship, either living or dead, and so on. And all this stuff, this accumulated grief, you take to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. So you may think, yeah, I've done my work and I'm okay. For instance, with a divorce or something like that, you go on to the next relationship, and guess what? You find yourself with a third person in the room, usually, or a fourth person if the other person has an ex too. Yeah. And it's like, what are we talking about here? What are we fighting? Well, some stuff from the past, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Those kinds of things are real.
Yeah, they are. And now, what was your background before you, from schooling and all of that? What were you doing before all this occurred?
Well, so let's backtrack the real. I actually have a background in technical communication and tech writing. That was my life in the gas and oil business before I had my son. And I'd done that since leaving Rochester. Actually, we had a business in Rochester for a bit of time, and then we went off and worked corporate jobs and just moved around quite a bit before I had my son. And then when I had my son, I had a major near fatal car accident as well, like a month before realizing I was pregnant. So that was another major significant loss in my loss history graph that we call it, our timeline. But all that to say, that's what I was doing before. And once I had my son and realized, okay, he's got a lot of high needs. He was born early, 31 weeker, and he also just had a ton of trauma in utero, etc. So when he was around 1, I knew something was off. That we both knew something was off, and it wasn't until he was 2 that he was diagnosed with autism. But he had brain trauma and brain surgery for a cyst in his left hemisphere that was all fluid based. So he was just, I didn't care what they called it. I just knew we had to continue doing everything we were doing for him at the time. So that became my world. So I switched and I thought, I can do some part-time work and all that stuff in communications and doing remote work, but it didn't work out for me. So I pivoted to special needs because that was my world. And so I did a lot of, in the early years, I was just strictly family caregiver. And so that's what I focus on now is grief and loss in the family caregiver world. But I was taking care of him for over a decade full time. And then I got into this work, as I said, after my divorce most recently. So that was back in 2018, 2019.
Yeah. What's your son's name?
Kenneth.
And how old is he now?
He just turned 20. So I'm in a different chapter of life with him. But
yeah.
He's doing well. He's doing great. He attends a school, a vocational program in a school that is designed for, they have a first grade to 12th, and then they have over 18 program, which is vocational, where they go out on the job every day and learn skills that way with a job coach. It's not a job as we think that. A lot of these kids, they all have disabilities. So they're all intellectually, we call it IDD, intellectual developmental disability. So they're all either have something, autism, Down syndrome is the primary in this school. But we have that group, the vocational, and then they have an over 21, what we call a day have or day program. Yeah. That, again, is a full day. So that's where he's at right now. Progress has been good, but he's not. We had, just like every other parent, hopes, dreams, expectations, and they didn't pan out over the years and ages and stages. And that's the kind of grief that I try to focus on and help my other caregivers with.
Oh, that's fantastic because it's so specialized, and that's needed for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that comes out again and again in the podcast, and I love it because getting in the grief workspace and finding out all these different avenues for people. And I think it's so important that you cover all the bases for people because they think they're lost out there. They think that they don't have anyone who understands their plight and those things. And so here you are, and I give you all the credit in the world. You're an incredible person to, and I'm sure you don't feel that way. I always say about the heroes here and the heroes in grief. And, You just do what you got to do. I know that, but you know, um, you can really encourage people by showing them that, you're in the midst of all of this, but still your heart is to help others, work with others. It's great that you have that, like I said, that specialized avenue to do that. And you find the people are probably very receptive to that, right?
Well, yeah, they like I said, most people come to this and first of all, they've never thought of it as grief, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
their child or adult son, daughter is living. And they've never thought about, okay, I'm carrying around all this baggage and all this emotional stuff, and it's affecting not only my son or daughter, holding them back maybe, and also their partner or spouse. It just ripples through everything. You know this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Grief ripples through everything. It
Right.
touches everyone, everything. Your work colleagues, everybody knows. Like they don't at some point they don't want to even talk to you, or they're trying to avoid you because oh yeah, that's the girl that blah blah blah. All she wants to talk about is her divorce, or she's mad about this or whatever. And that anger is just another level of grief. But I guess I'm bouncing around, but I mean, it doesn't matter. It does matter, obviously. Grief is very specific, individualized and unique.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't even if I lost my brother and you lost your brother or your son,
Mm-hmm.
my father lost his son at an early age. Like those things are very individualized and unique. I can't say I know how you feel because I don't. I know it's not good,
Mm-hmm.
but people they say the worst things at those times, and also none of us were taught healthy ways to deal with that and positive things to say to people and loved
Yeah.
ones when that happens. So we just kind of skirt around it, and people they want to hear about it, or they just try to redirect you, and usually into things that are not going to help you. So you stay busy at work, you may drink too much, eat too much, watch too much Netflix, etc. All those things my caregivers families are doing as well. Moms and dads that are primary caregivers to individuals with disabilities. And you just try to get through each day, but what kind of life is that?
Right. Right.
So that's the crux of it.
I think you hit the nail. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That's what I think that people are missing, and they don't really realize until it's too late, or they are just, like I said, drowning, and they just have to have something, and they're like, okay, I'm going to call Gina finally. Like I've heard her talk about this in the group. I've seen her at a vendor show or whatever, and I think I need this, but until it gets really, really bad, you're not going to try to help yourself, right?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, though, when you said about the fact that you didn't realize that, or you spoke about the dreams of your son, and they were dashed, and so that grief story right there is a huge one. And yes, these people just start dealing with things and they just push it off, and it's going to creep up again and again, as grief does, if you don't deal with it. So how important. I'm just so happy to hear what you're doing there. That's incredible stuff. It really is. And I just love being able to have resources for people, that just don't have any hope out there. So it's amazing.
Well, it's something, like I said, I wouldn't be brought to this if it wasn't in my world, and my son has changed my world in so many ways, in positive ways, really. I just didn't know that and think that in the early years because I was just trying to stay above water.
Yeah.
Like we all are. Whatever it is for you, you're just trying to stay above water, and, we all have our things and our vices to get through that. And most, like I said, most of the society, even some of your family members, they were not around to help me with anything healthy. they were just like, get through it. You're the strongest person that we know, and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I don't want to be strong anymore. I'm
Yep.
dying inside. Like I literally, I've been strong, but I don't need any more hits because it kept coming and coming and coming in waves. And so it's just, that's the kind of thing I want to, that's why I want to introduce people to this, because although it's not a be all end all, it will help you tremendously. And it's life, right? Things keep coming. Yeah. We're not going to just have one loss and then that's it, or one major loss. Thank God I didn't have, too many traumatic events after that, the last, 2 or 3, but there'll be other things. So you just have to figure out good, healthy ways and coping skills to get through the next ones, because it will come.
Yeah.
So,
are you finding in your circles? I'm finding that part of what I'm feeling led to do in this is educate the people, not necessarily the people experiencing grief, but the ones around it, like you're talking about, and help them to have better resources to deal with people, whether they're close grief friends or whether they're not. There's healthy ways of being able to support the people. And you mentioned the workplace and things like that. I drive during the day. I drive Uber and Lyft and things, and I have a placard on the back of my seats about the podcast. And so people talk to me about it. And I had a gentleman who was coming in. He was actually a manager at Walmart. And so he started talking to me about the podcast. And then he said, I was telling him that I'm thinking about getting into possibly speaking places and maybe workplaces and helping them with grief situations. And he said, that would be awesome because I have this woman and her husband was sick for a long time. And she came in the house one day and found him hanging in the house. And he goes, wow. She has not been right since. And I said, of course she's not, and I said, wow. You think about work productivity, all these different things. And the people around her, of course, how do you, no matter what level you're on, you can learn how to better support somebody who's in that situation. So I see that as a huge avenue to be able to do that. Are you finding that in the work that you're doing as well as helping the people around the situation too?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I am a partner with a group called LOLA, Loss of Life Advocates, out of San Antonio. This is a woman, Esther Pipoli, who started this business about 8 years ago out of her own story of losing her dad and her husband within like 69 days. Oh. Anyway, she's doing that, just that. She's educating people in the workplace and going into the workspace and doing that. So that, and just helping people with not just end of life issues and getting prepared and, understanding that life insurance that you're hoping that is going to kick in for your spouse when you are gone, it may not. It took her like over a year to get access to it. Those kinds of things just you're not prepared for, right? Your whole world gets kind of shaken up just by losing your loved one first, and then all these other things kind of happening in the same time, and she wasn't able to focus at work, etc. So that's hugely important, is getting out there to educate people in general, but also in the workplace. We don't do a good enough job in any space that I've seen. In corporations, large corporations, small corporations, some of the largest corporations that have all these employee assistance programs, they still don't do as great a job. So that everybody can do a little bit more. And having that someone to call that has been through it / is organized around that kind of thing, and also has people that, she has her specific group. There's several out there, but her specific group has really done a great job in getting you to different resources. They're not employees of hers, but she knows, like, okay, so if this is in Dallas Fort Worth, let me call Gina and I'll hand it over to her. She could take over doing grief recovery with this particular person or whatever, or this group. It's a work in progress. I hope. My hope is that in 5-10 years, we're not having that same discussion, that, companies are stepping up and taking better care of their employees. We just went through major COVID, right? And we're all back to work kind of, and everybody's like, oh yeah, we're fine. I'm fine. I'm like, no, you're not fine. Yeah. Everybody's falling apart. Those people, you probably met them, Tom, those people that were taking care of themselves with something and had some kind of focus or some kind of routine and practice that they were doing, whether it's whatever, physical, mental, spiritual, or a combination, they're doing okay. They're doing pretty well. The people that didn't do anything, they're doing terribly, right? And they're the ones walking in like, they have no motivation. They don't, like, they're doing terrible with their relationships and at work, and they're just trying to get through. So again, like, it's up to all of us to step up, I think, and help one another, but really get them the certified, experienced people that they need. You wouldn't send somebody, someone off the street to handle your divorce, right? You want to go to a lawyer that is going to help you, or special needs trust that we do with caregivers in our world. We need to go to a lawyer for that. We don't just try and wing it ourselves. So there's that. I also see people that are trying to lean on their friends and family more. And although that's nice and people love you and they want to see you better, they don't know they're not experienced, they're not professionals. You really need to speak to somebody who's experienced and can help you in a faster way get to the other side, because your friends and family, they just want you to move to the next stage, and they also have their own emotional hangups and all that. So
Yeah. I heard a great illustration today, and I kind of made it my own. I used my own story in this. And
yeah.
so I used to be a tour guide in Niagara Falls. And
Mm-hmm.
so that was many years ago, but I still drive for that company, and I bring people from the airport all the time that are from out of town, and they're coming in. And the illustration is, I tell those people all the time, I'm like, you probably should take a tour. It's probably the best way to see the falls and everything. And
Mm-hmm.
the illustration is that they could walk around and hit places, but they really don't know. But when you have somebody who knows, who understands the place and everything, you're going to get a
Mm-hmm.
much better picture. And so it's the same thing
Sure.
in the grief space, of course. And that's what we all are. We're just helpers along the way. Well, you don't have to be, professionally certified, in certain ways. It depends, you're a coach as well, and helping people to traverse that course because you've been through it in a certain way. It's not the same.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, their grief is different and everything, but we have some tools that we've gained along the way that we might be able to assist them with. And so I really like that illustration where you're a guide for them, really, to help them in an area that they're not familiar with, pretty much.
Right. And nobody is prepared, and nobody is as familiar with the walk as you are, and whatever situation you're trying to work through. So again, I'm using the grief recovery method with all those different losses. It's not, it's not like, okay, so I lost my brother, I know what you feel like with your brother. Again, I just want to reiterate the fact that we don't want to get into the comparison game. That's really
Yeah.
dangerous, actually.
No.
And we don't want people to feel like, okay, yeah, I'm coming to you because you've done this with your kid. Well, it may be completely different. So there's similarities, and then those touch points. And I kind of, with my work, especially with the caregivers, I kind of know now that my son's 20 and I've been in this roller coaster since, age 1, really, that, and before, I feel like that, yeah, I know kind of the chapters of grief. I didn't really call it that until I started walking through it myself, with him specifically. So it's different. But I do feel that, yes, you do need to use certified and people who are in the business to walk you through it, because it's more, it's faster. You're going to get there faster, and you're also going to get folks who are not going to emotionally attach to your story as well, and share all about their story. It's one thing to share your story in the midst of just sharing with a friend, but it's another to walk it through with a professional.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah. And are there things that you've learned things that have popped up? I always talk about these nuggets that come up, certain things that you realize during the course of your work here that,
mm-hmm.
I just call them nuggets. There's something that you kind of stick on all the time, that popped up that like, wow, that's an important point for me. Do you have anything like that kind of sticks out for you?
Yes. The biggest the biggest helpful thing I could say is keep doing your work, because a lot of people think that they have done the work on X and then they're done. As I said in the beginning of our discussion, there's about 7 or 8 losses on average that everybody's carrying around with them. So learn those tools, get complete, and we call it emotionally complete. Get complete, get rid of that painful stuff that's triggering you every time with the event or relationship, and replace it with the good stuff. We're not telling you to forget the person, especially if it's a person who's died. We're telling you to forget that, to get rid of that emotional pain, and we're showing you how to do that. And there's steps to do that, and a letter that is culminated at the end with this particular methodology. So, and we walk you through it. It's nothing you can do by yourself. You have to have help to do that. So the nugget is keep doing the work.
Yeah.
And Cole will say this as well on his podcast, the founder of the Institute. It's so important, because we think like we're done, and then another thing bubbles up. And then sometimes, even like with my divorce, there's things, because we have to still share my son's time, and we are still co-guardians of his life and co-parenting. There's things that bubble up still that are emotional triggers that I have to work through, and they're called PS letters in our method. So I call up another specialist. We go through it together real quickly because she's trained in it too, and then we get through that. And it's like, okay, now I feel like I can keep going.
Yeah,
If
yeah.
that makes sense.
No,
Sorry,
definitely.
I'm putting a little bit of things in there, but I'm, that's the biggest thing that I think people don't do. They think that they've done enough, and then they go about their life, and then they get stuck again, or they get triggered again, and it just brings them under, and they're like, oh, shoot, I don't know, you know,
Yeah.
I don't know what to do, so I'm going to go back to my default, which is the unhealthy stuff.
Hmm.
Does that make sense?
Excellent point, and you brought me right back to what I forgot about actually, and that's that
Yeah.
we always say you've got to work through it, and you've got to go through it. You don't avoid it. You have to go through it.
Mm-hmm.
And I did some stuff with David Kessler, and he talks about what you just said, and to replace the pain with more love than pain eventually.
Mm-hmm.
And so the grieving doesn't stop. And I found too that I took a certified grief educator course from him, and I just started re-listening to the lessons, and I took it
Mm-hmm.
last summer. So I'm at a different place now. It's affecting me differently, and it's working with me differently. And that's the point you're making there, that there's still growth to be done. It never stops. This is a lifelong learning thing now. And so, to work through it and bring those new things into your, as you progress and you move on, to bring the new things in to then apply at that time. It may bring up older things too, that you were like, wow, I didn't realize that was happening at that time. And now, yes, so that's something that I need to work with now.
That's great. Yeah. Yeah. So see, you're experiencing that. And that's huge, right? Because
Yeah.
we are on a trajectory, and it is different. You're kind of in a fog. I know of all the death that I've experienced since, like, at an early age, 15, I lost my uncle Jay, Uncle Jesse,
Mm-hmm.
we called him. And that I didn't realize how much of an impact that was until 35 years later. I'm sitting in the training, like working through stuff, and I'm like, oh, holy moly, like I had no idea this was affecting me. And so when you're going through it, you're in a fog.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can't even tell you. I can't even remember. First of all, like my parents didn't handle it very well as far as all that, and it was kind of tragic how he, not how he died, but how my brother and my dad found him in his apartment on
Wow.
Thanksgiving Day, kind of thing. Like it was you can imagine how that like went through the family, and how our every Thanksgiving was horrible because of that. My dad finding his oldest brother in that way, and him telling them don't bring Gina, because we lived in northern New Jersey at the time. He lived in the city, and we would pick him up and bring him to our house, and we'd have dinner together. But I remember him telling me, like, later on, many years later, he definitely knew something was up. He didn't want you to come. And so they took care of that, but it affected the whole family, period. Like, they tried to protect you. This is also another point to make as I'm telling that story. You try to protect your kids and bubble your kids. Please don't do that. Even if they have an intellectual disability, I have not bubbled my child as much as possible within reason. Of all those things, like the rituals that come with the burial, the memorial service, the going out to eat with family and friends, the visitation, all that stuff, whatever it is for you. Some people do it in a church, some people do it at other places. Whatever it is for you, have them experience that, because that's a sense they're grieving too. And I think that we
Mm-hmm.
rob our children and our young adults of that. And for years, I was mad at my parents and my dad, especially, for shielding me from that. I was 15. I wasn't a kid per se.
Mm-hmm.
And it affected me majorly. So sorry to get off track there, but it just, like, when I tell that story and I remember back to that, I'm just like, wow, like I'm not going to do that. And so when my dad died, and my dad was the only one that, my mom was already passed when my son was born. And my dad had a close relationship with him, even though he lived all the way in New Jersey. He was here a lot, and vice versa. So it was important for me. I knew Kenneth needed to be there. I knew he needed to be there a year later when we put his ashes in the lake. Like, we walked through all the steps, and I had my friends help me with that, and it was horrible that I had to do this. But I was like, it's important. It has to be. I have to do this. So That's another huge thing. People try to protect others and they think they're doing the right thing, but you really mess up. I'm a testimony, and many people that take grief recovery will say it. Like, don't do that with your kids.
Yeah, I
Please don't do that with
experienced
kids.
that. My dad died when I was 10. And I
Hmm.
did go to all the rituals and everything. And, some of them are horrific memories, but I still experienced it. And you talk about a
Hmm.
15-year-old girl, yourself, and, you know, you your defense mechanisms go up at that time, for you to
Hmm.
protect you, and you're
Hmm.
processing at a whole different level than
Hmm.
when you learn life and you're moving on and everything. And so it makes total sense that different things were revealed to you later on and everything. And so another important lesson right there to help people along the way and say, this is ongoing.
Hmm.
You do not stop. Just keep working on yourself through all of this, and you can do it better. Who knows the
Right.
right way, but you can do it better, right?
Yeah. Well, again, I would have never really, Tom, I would have never even gone there if I hadn't done the stuff in 2019. And so I would have never even, because I thought, yeah, I'm kind of over that. Or, yeah, I've talked to my father about it a few times when I'm, in another decade of my period of my life as adults, talking about it, sharing it. But it was really just enlightening and kind of scary that
Mm.
it took that long for me to realize like how much that impacted so many of my other relationships and the way I reacted to things in my life. So it's ongoing because I haven't done a complete release of that. And when my brother died when I was 19, kind of, these things bubble up, right? Same thing, but different scenario. My brother died of HIV and AIDS during the 80s, which was
Mm.
late, late 80s. It was already kind of a bad time and shame and all the things that are going on with that, right?
Yeah.
Culturally, and
Yeah.
we're a Hispanic family, so again, is like another level of layer of all these things. My dad didn't handle it well. Nobody's handling it well, but it was just like all of that came on top of the 15-year-old. And
Mm.
I thought, okay, I just need to push through again and I need to make it through and just get through. But oh, again, like poorly handled situation in the family. It was my brother's wish not for me to see him, obviously, but at the end, but it really messed me up. I
Mm.
was already in Rochester by that time. I had started school locally because when they told me when I was 18, and making the decision where to go to college, they're like, it's your choice, but this is happening. And I'm like, well, that's a no brainer. I'm going to stay locally in case something does happen and then transfer. So I did that, but unfortunately, it was April 1990 when he passed, and so I had to deal with all that. All that to say, again, like I wasn't prepared. It didn't prepare me anymore, and that just is another one of those things that wasn't handled well in the family. And I try to learn from that, and I'm trying to teach my son at his level, how to express himself and how to express the sadness. And if he wants to sit down and talk about it, I talk about it. And he wants to write a letter about it, we write a letter about it, or whatever it is. Those kinds of things just are huge, and they're huge gains within your family. So I just want to stress like how important it is to be open to that, and you can't be open to it unless you've done some work on yourself. So
Mm-hmm.
they kind of go hand in hand, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway.
I want to just talk to the folks out there who may be listening that are brand new in their grief, because we're talking about some pretty advanced things and moving on things here. And if you're brand new in grief, just deal with your moment to moment right now, and take care of yourself. Getting through those acute phases of grief, because they're much different than when you move forward a little bit and can address some of these things. So it's not saying that any of these things can't be applicable to you, but take care of yourself. Those early stages are horrific, and like you said, you're in a total different dimension, really, at those times. So just a thing out to those folks out there. I always think about them, because as we
Yeah.
move forward and I move forward, and I know what I'm dealing with. I'm a year and a half out of Jeff dying, and so it's like, but I'm at a pretty good place,
Mm-hmm.
considering, I guess, from
Mm-hmm.
what people tell me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I always want to go back and think about those folks, because, I'm in some groups and things where those folks are there, and I just have a heart for them. I care for them. And it's not all about all this, progression stuff and everything. It does happen, and it can happen, and you can get in a better place. But, I just have a heart for those people too. So I like to get it out there.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. And I'm sorry. I can't even imagine what you've dealt with. And no one should go through this, but we all have things happen. And thank God you have support of others, and you're leading the way with this podcast and being part of those groups to show them that that there is hope as a parent who's lost a child.
Yeah, I think that's, it's certainly a purpose of this and you and what you're doing. And, it just slays me that society is so uninformed on a lot of this. And so
ill-prepared.
Yeah. So
to say the least.
We're all just trying to get it out there. That's what all this is about. So more and more. And, you can hear other podcasts that may be doing the same thing, talking about the same things, but I don't see that there's competition at all or anything like that. We're all trying to serve a purpose here. So, and Gina, thank you. Your work is amazing. You're an amazing person all the way around. It's great to get your acquaintance and have you as a resource out there, because I'm a huge resource person. I've got to start making a list, like I said, because, oh my gosh, I come across all these things and I'm like, and then people come to me, because they know what I'm doing or what I've been through. And they're just like, Tom, can you help with this? And I'm like, oh, I got to search it out, instead of being smart and making a database. But,
no, it's I'm the same way. It's cool. I like to connect people. And so, I'm glad to make your acquaintance too. So if I can help with anything, give me a shout.
Appreciate it. Yeah. We're going to get all your information in the links that you talked about. And what was the other one? NOLA? Is that the one you said? Or Lola or something like that?
Lola. Loss of Life Advocates.
Yeah.
lossoflifeadvocates.com.
Yeah. If you send that along to me too, I'd like to get that one on there for sure. And what was the other one you mentioned that you didn't send me or didn't have yet?
I think that was it. So what else did I talk about earlier?
All right.
It'll come to me. But
when I go through, I'll get it for you too, so you can get that. So. But Gina Waterman, thank you again, and I appreciate you taking the time to do this, and we will be in touch, I'm sure, and we'll get more information out there to everybody, okay?
Sounds great. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the Heroes in Grief podcast. If you'd like access to any of the links that we discussed in today's show, you can find them in the show notes. There's also a link there to support the podcast if you care to. And there is an email link for me there. I'd love to hear from you and your ideas about the show or what you thought about the show. You really can help out this podcast to get to more people if you subscribe, rate, or review it in whichever way your platform provides. Each week, Heroes in Grief is released on Sunday, so look for new episodes there. Thank you again for listening to Heroes in Grief.